What do you feel watching these images? What stories do they tell you? They have an impact on you? Welcome to today's class. My name is Natalie Sosa. I am a foreign languages student, and today I will be talking to you about art. So, it is called Futurism. It was an avant-garde artistic movement that emerged in Italian art in the 20th century. It is characterized by innovation, speed, and modernity. The movement's influence radiated over across most Europe, especially to the Russian avant-garde. The most significant results of the movement were in the visual arts and poetry. As I said, it emerged in Italy, but more specifically in Milan, and it quickly spread to Turin and Naples. There are many incredible pieces of art made during the Futurism period, but today I decided to analyze one that is called The Strength of a Street. It was created in 1911 and it is an iconic painting by Umberto Boccioni, a prominent figure in the Italian Futurist movement. Please take your time to analyze it. It is currently located in Kunstmuseum Basel in Switzerland. Now, moving forward, speaking of the characteristics that he used to paint his art, we can find several things that I will explain to you. Boccioni utilizes his characteristic fragmented, overlapping forms and swirling lines to capture the sensation of motion and the dynamism of the modern life. First of all, he uses divisionism, a technique derived from the Neo-Impressionism that involves breaking down colors into small, distinct strokes that create a visual effect of light and movement. He also used futurist dynamism. The painting composition suggests that it started upward, with no shadows and swirls of white paint, further emphasizing the energy and movement of the whole street. He also had an influence of Cubism. Boccioni incorporates Cubist elements like these lines, often referred to as force lines. They depict the power and direction of the figures in the scene. He also had this abstract representation where the people in there they're not individuals but rather part of a collective force, emphasizing the power and dynamism of the city itself. Finally, he had this emphasis on movement. Boccioni's goal was to depict the constant movement and progress of a modern city rather than a static, upholding finished state. He did not want that. He wanted to share the message of movement and change. And for the aesthetic experience that it causes me personally, it gives me a mix of weird but beautiful sensations. For example, when I look at this painting, when I first look at it, when I was doing my research, I had to need to be inside the painting and enjoy the lights that were coming from the upper part of the painting. It makes me feel nostalgic and happy at the same time. I enjoy discovering things and pieces of art that can make me feel like that. Also, it makes me feel calm and mysterious about what is really happening in the painting. And also, I have the question of why people seem rather like ghosts or not complete individuals at all. Maybe they're lost, or maybe they're changing, they're developing, they're leaving their old selves behind to change and also complete the idea that Bocchioni had in this painting. Um, the colors in every corner also call my attention. They're not yellowish at all and not orange at all. I thought at first that it would be like down when the sun is setting, but no, I think I get to the conclusion that it's nighttime. But yeah, that was the aesthetic experience for me. The painting also provokes in me sad emotions. It makes me feel nostalgic. It reminds me of when I was a kid and night came. The weight of it all just didn't matter anymore, and everyone was relaxed and having a good time just watching the night flow. Also, the lights that I mentioned to you before gave me like a sensation of hope and that are better things ahead. In other hand, identification of recognizable objects and symbols that we can see in the painting. First of all, is the people vagging in an open street with several terminals that are not very clear. Also, we have some unfinished buildings that depicts a dynamic and energetic vision of urban life in Italy, particularly focused on construction and industrialization of Milan. It captures the contrast between the emerging modernity of the city and the traditional labor required to build it. These aspects highlight both the power of machines and the power of of animal labor. Also, the painting showcases the futurist movement's fascination with speed, motion, and the energy of the modern world. So, as I was saying in the beginning of the video, it all developed in the 20th century. It was the year 1909 when the poet, Italian of course, Filippo Tommaso Marinetti, founded the movement Futurism. The futurists admire speed, technology, youth, and violence. The automobile, the airplane, and the industrial city, everything that represented humanity's triumph over nature. They repudiated the cult of the copies of the past and all imitation and praised originality, however bold, however violent, proudly bore the stain of madness. Despite our critics are useless, rebel against harmony and good taste, swept away all themes and subjects of all previous art, and gloried in science. The futurists had an extremely negative attitude towards the past and cultural heritage in general. They believed that focusing on the past was a burden, and we have to focus on one's full social potential in the present moment. They had a particular animosity towards the institution of the museum, which they believed that museums should not exist. They did not view art history through the prism of achieving continuity. They just see it as a waste of space. The only exceptions were the Cubists and the Post-Impressionists, whose work the Futurists appreciated and who greatly influenced their artistic expressions. As a movement that had ambitions greater than purely artistic actions, the Futurists aspired to social transformation in a broader framework. This transformation should have been achieved, on the one hand, through modernization of the economy and cultural practices, and on the other hand, throughout the revolutionary and violent means of war that were part of the fascist political program. Now, centering in the periods of time, it is believed that Futurism had two important phases. The first one being the heroic period from 1909 to 1916, and a second wave following World War One that lasted until Marinetti's death in 1944. The first phase centered in Italy and marked by the dynamism, speed, and technology of life, and also with the Marinetti's Futurist Manifesto as its foundation text. The second wave saw like a restoration, a revival of the movement with some other artists and thinkers continuing to explore futuristic ideals and themes. The Futurist Manifesto, published by Marinetti in 1909, is the founding declaration of the movement. In it, Marinetti expressed his rejection of all things old, especially political and artistic tradition, and proclaimed his admiration for speed, technology, youth, violence, and machismo. Here I have some resume of what he says on the manifesto. Pause if you need more time to read it. The Futurism had primarily themes centered around the idea of embracing speed, technology, and the dynamism of modern life. It celebrated the industrial city, machines like cars and airplanes, and the energy of youth, and the working class, all as forces of change and progress. Now, on the other hand, the most prominent artists associated with Futurism include Umberto Boccioni, Giacomo Balla, Carlo Carrà, Gino Severini, Luigi Russolo, Antonio Sant'Elia, Joseph Stella, and finally Fortunato Di Pero. These are just a few examples of the artists of this era and art movement. These three artworks are key to Futurism because they embody the artist's obsession with movement, speed, and modern life. Unique Forms of Continuity in Space by Boccioni captures the human figure in motion, almost like it's merging with the air around it. Dynamism of a Dog on a Leash by Bala uses repeated lines to show motion blur like a fast photo. The Funeral of the Anarchist Gali by Carrà uses chaotic forms and dramatic color to express political energy and violence. All three show Futurism's break from tradition and celebration of a fast-changing world. Futurist artists use blood brushstrokes, overlapping lines, and fragmentation. They painted with oils and used bronze, wood, and mixed media for sculptures, aiming to show energy and movement in solid form. My conclusions are that in this era, it's important to retake some of the points that futurists had for development and how to work as a society in conjoint with now machines and artificial intelligence, and just to make developing good benefits for society and just for humans. I did not like the part where they started to make it about war, violence, and gender inequality. But in the other hand, I think it's a very interesting way of advancing in science and in many other fields. And that was it for me. Thank you very much for watching.